Let us bow our heads for prayer as we begin to study the Word of God. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, Lord, for your blessings. We thank you for the opportunity to be here to worship you. We ask that your presence may be here with us, that you may speak to us through your Word, that we may become the kind of church, the kind of people, and the kind of Christians that we need to be. Bless us today in the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. We continue today our series on the book of Nehemiah. A lot of times when we read the Bible, we only see these spiritual deep lessons in the Bible, and we forget that the Bible is very practical. In fact, the Bible is more practical than we think. And the Bible touches on every single subject on it, that we have to deal with in our life. The book of Nehemiah is a book that deals a lot with leadership. And each one of us, as we talk about this subject of leadership, this is not a seminar on leadership, but this is a biblical subject because we are all leaders in one aspect or another. As a father or a mother, you're a leader in a home. A lot of times in churches, one thing that happens is that you are asked to lead something in church, but yet no one has ever taught you how to lead. No one's ever taught leadership. And I think that this is a very important subject for Christians. Because I think for all Christians, at one point or another, we are put in a position of leadership. The Bible calls us, all Christians, kings and priests. Not just pastors, calls all Christians kings and priests. In other words, that we are all ought to be leaders. As we study the book of Nehemiah, and we see a little bit about Nehemiah, Nehemiah was a cupbearer for the king of the Medes and the Persians. In other words, he was a servant. He was a slave there. And from slavery or servanthood, he's called to lead. But not lead in something small, but to actually lead in something big, which was the reconstructions of the walls of Jerusalem. A lot of times, you are in church and maybe you're just sitting on a bench, or maybe you're just sitting on a seat, just observing. And at one point or another, the church asks you to lead in something. But a lot of times you haven't been taught the principles of leadership. The book of Nehemiah touches on that. And the reason why I've chosen to do this series on the book of Nehemiah is because as we here at Origin go into another phase, and we're going to be going into a building that we can have, that we can meet 24/7, and that we can do a lot of things there. I want you to know that this first part of Origin has just been practice. And we've just been practicing for 4 years. Okay? Now we're going to go into full-blown ministry. We've only been able to meet here once a week. Now we're going to have a church where we're going to be able to meet 24/7. And we want us to continuously teach, give seminars, teach the community. A lot of times when people think about having church is that every time we invite somebody, we're going to preach a sermon to them. No, the church should not just preach sermons. The church should also teach people how to live their daily life. So in this place, we're going to be teaching, we're going to be bringing in people from the community. We're going to be inviting people from the community to do finance seminars, marital seminars, even teach classes, even do GED programs, even do all these kinds of things that brings the community into the church. Now, I as a pastor can't do that by myself. In fact, most of it, I can't do it by myself. That means that a lot of you are going to come in. And Origin has never been a church where we've created maybe an all-star pastor or all-star, staff that does everything. Our idea has always been to involve everyone, involve every gift. We really believe in 1 Peter 4:10-11 says the following. 1 Peter 4:10-11, it says, as each one has received a gift, each one, that means that you have a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If anyone speaks, let him speak as an oracles of God. If anyone ministers, let him do it as with the ability which God supplies, that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, so whom belong the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. In other words, God has given each one of you a gift. And that gift has been given to you so that you can fill an emptiness in the church. Because maybe you only have that gift and that ability. The body cannot be complete without you. There's something that you have to offer. There's something that you have to give that God is going to ask you for that. Like the parable of the talents. God is going to ask you for that. And God says, I gave you the ability, I gave you the opportunity, and you just sat on it. You didn't do anything about it. And you know what? Those gifts and abilities are given to us to bless us. When you exert your gift in the body, you grow spiritually and you become blessed. Why? Because you become an instrument in the hand of God. You become like the hammer in the hand of the carpenter. You become like the instrument in the hands of someone who plays it. You become that instrument. And God begins to use you for His glory. A lot of times people say they haven't experienced God. They haven't really experienced God in their life. That's because you haven't put yourself in the hands of the carpenter. You haven't put yourself in the hands of God according to the gifts that He has given you. So let us go into the book of Nehemiah as we read this and we continue learning about leadership. As I go through this, believe me, I've been learning about leadership. So a lot of the things that I say here are things that I try to teach myself on leadership. And believe me, these are things that you will be able to use at your work where you're at. Everywhere that you are, you'll be able to use these principles. If we go to the book of Nehemiah, we'll go to chapter 2, verse 17. Now Nehemiah, he had already gone back from the capital of Susa, gone to Jerusalem, reached there. He had received a conviction from God to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Now the walls of Jerusalem, if you remember, had been torn down for 93 years. They had just been laying there. And the Jewish people there, they were living inside the wall, and they did not build the walls. They were just laying there. And no one had the motivation to start building them up again and start doing something for themselves. And a lot of times as we look at our lives, there are walls and things that have been torn down in our lives for so long, and we a lot of times don't do anything about it. And they're just laying there. And a lot of times we just complain about, I just don't have the motivation to do this, and years go by and we are constantly just wishing that we could be this type of person or be that type of person. I wish I was the type of person who really put a plan together and saw it through. Because as you look at your life, you see that how many things you've started and you don't finish them. But you just keep looking at that. You keep looking at those torn down walls and you really don't do anything about it. And years go by without you stepping up and saying, I'm going to do something about my inconsistency. I'm going to build these walls back up. And maybe go and find a mentor, somebody say, listen, I have this problem. Can you help me with this problem? And what happens that just as the Israelites were living in a city of torn walls, they probably walked by and said, well, boy, look at those walls, man. They're just torn down. Okay, let me go eat lunch, And a lot of times we do that with our own lives. We constantly complain about our situations. We complain about our relationships. We complain about our health. We complain about our finances. And we complain about these things, and we actually get comfortable complaining, but we never say, I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to involve other people in my life. I'm going to come together with somebody who is strong in that area where I am weak and have them hold me accountable so that I can accomplish that. And just as the people of Israel for 93 years saw those walls torn down, we sometimes look at our lives and we have our walls that are torn down. And all we do is complain about it. Acknowledging your mistake is good, but it's not an excuse. I recognize that. Okay, how long are you going to recognize that? It almost makes you think that by recognizing it and apologizing for it, it's okay. No. Change must be made. Change must be made. Nehemiah comes and he sees the walls. And last week we talked about it. He comes, he sees the walls. When he gets there, he just spends 3 days not doing anything. Just looking. Finding a way. How he's going to build these walls. And we talk about that sometimes leadership, as leaders, you come into a place, and a lot of times I've seen this with young pastors. And sometimes when I can, I try to counsel them. A lot of times young pastors will come into a church, and they come in with a plan already. They don't know the congregation. They don't know the city. They don't know what's needed, but they come in and implement their own plan without taking the time to observe the congregation, the people, the place, observing and seeing what they're doing, and then developing a plan together with the people. So a lot of times they'll come in as pastors and they have this whole plan, they have this whole thing, they think they have this great vision, they put it together, and they're like gone, gung-ho, and they look back and the church is not following them. Why? Because the church was never part of their plan. They never shared the plan. They never got people to own the plan. Nehemiah took his time. Then later what he did, he took 3 people with him. We talked about that last week, which means that he involves people in his plan. I'll give you a little secret. Some things that I do. You know that when we go to our new church, we're planning a 4 o'clock service, okay? And everybody knows that now. Okay? Do you know how long I've been talking about this 4 o'clock service? My board of elders know I've been talking about this 4 o'clock service for about a year. You know why? Because I know that having a 4 o'clock service Saturday afternoon for some is a shock. What? So it had to be something that I would just talk about it. And I would just plant it in your minds. And I remember that some of you, when you heard it, you were really, what, 4 o'clock Saturdays? 4 o'clock service? And as time goes on, you're able to think about it. You're able to see the advantages of it. But then you could not see what I was looking at. And it's taken time to be able to talk about it, reason it out, to see why. Why? Because this is something I had thought about already, but you hadn't. And I had to get you to go through the same process that I went through. Because I was there, but you were not there yet. I could not stand there. I had to come back here with you, talk to you about it, to then take you there little by little. Where now, some of you are more like seeing the light to it. What happens is that that in leadership, sometimes you're going to see yourself as children's leaders. You're going to see yourself as parents. You're going to see yourself, and you see things, but other people don't see it yet. You need to be patient. You need to take the time, because owning a vision and being part of a vision takes time. And what happens is that sometimes we get frustrated because our kids might not see what we see. Well, you're 50 years old. And sometimes we want our children to think like 50 years old. And sometimes you put a plan together and you want people to see what you see. And if you don't have the patience to work with the people and to take them along with you. Remember, you don't lead projects, you lead people. And the project is never more important than the people. Okay? Nehemiah comes in finally. Now he confronts the people. He finally comes in now. He's going to talk to the people. And he said to them, you see the distress that we are in. How Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with what? With what? Let's wake up, okay? Let's go. Come on. I think it's a little dark in here. Can we put the light up a little bit in the congregation? I can't see the people, and it bothers me when I can't see your eyes. Okay. Then I said to them, the distress that we are in. How Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. And he shows them, he says, listen, can't you see what's going on around us? Can't you see that the walls are torn down? See, people, sometimes it takes someone else to show us what's going on in our lives, because sometimes we are so used to our walls being torn down that we stop noticing it, and we need somebody else to tell us, you know what, the walls are torn down. There's something wrong in your life. And sometimes it takes somebody else to do that, to show us that our walls are torn down. But sometimes it makes it hard for us. It makes it hard for us to admit when someone else tells us. One of the most difficult things for us to create change is our own ego. Our ego. Sometimes we realize that we need somebody else to help us. See, the idea of mentorship and discipleship has disappeared. In the ancient world, this was something that constantly existed, where people went to other people, where people had a mentor, when people had someone that they could trust. And Nehemiah says here, he tells them, listen, you see the distress that we are in. And then he says, at the end of the verse, come and let us build the walls of Jerusalem that we may no longer be a reproach. And I just want to talk about this text, verse 17. Because as I saw this text, I wanted to preach on more. But I got stuck on this text. Because this text began to talk to me. And it began to tell me a lot of things about leadership. And it began to tell me a lot of things about when God calls us to work and serve Him. Nehemiah could see what was wrong. So number one, this verse tells us the ability to see deficiencies outside of us. Do you have that ability? Do you have the ability to see what's wrong? A lot of people have that. It's the easiest ability in the world. Okay? You walk into a church, and 5 minutes later, you know what's wrong with that church. Okay? It's the easiest thing in the world. You go to a job, right? You go to a job, you start a job, and pretty soon you have the ability to figure out what's wrong with your boss. Or you have the ability, what is really needed here. You know? So you can walk into a church, and 5 minutes later, you can tell what's wrong. You can listen to me preach, and 3 minutes after listening to me preach, you're able to perceive, you're able to identify what's wrong with Pastor Labrador. How his sermon could be better. You have an ability to do that. And I want to tell you that that's a great ability to do that. There are some people who might go someplace and they think that everything is fine. That's the other extreme. Everything is fine. You just take things as it comes. But maybe you're that type of person who can walk into a place and think and say, you know what? This could be better if it was done this way. Do any of you think you have that ability? Okay, a lot of people have that ability. But you see, the way you're made is what gives you that ability to see what no one else can see outside of you. What I want you to see today is that you have a responsibility with that ability. Sounds good, right? A responsibility with that ability, right? You have a responsibility with that ability. If you find yourself that you are a big critique, in other words, you have that ability to see what's wrong, then you also now have a what? A responsibility. You also have a responsibility. Now, you are able to see what's wrong in a way that maybe other people can't see what's wrong. Why? Because God has made you in a specific way. You have a specific characters. You have a specific way of looking at things that is unique to you. Do you see how important you are to this church? Can you see where I'm going? You have something because of how you were made, your culture, your genes, whatever, that gives you something. That you're going to see things like no one else does. Like I can't see them as the pastor. But with that ability, it also carries a responsibility. As a leader, it is crucial that you listen to other people and make them serious and take them seriously because they see things you can't see. So now I, as a pastor, as a leader, I have to understand that you see things that I can't see. So I have to take you seriously. I have to know that that exists. And as a leader, when you lead any department in church, anything at your job, anything that you do, you have to respect the idea that other people can see things that you cannot see. And that is part of leadership. Recognizing that everyone has a way of seeing things, and you must respect that. Why? Because it's not about you, it's about the goal you're trying to reach. Leaders who don't listen to other people who are under them are leaders who think that this is about them. Oh my God, if I let somebody else give me an idea, I won't be that bright. I mean, it won't look good. I mean, what kind of leader if I am if somebody in my group is telling me what to do? Okay? When you fall into that, you're already falling into a trap of that some leaders fall into, that you ultimately end up destroying yourself. This also goes for us parents in any position that we are while working with people. It's okay for a parent to hear a suggestion of a child on how to do something better. It's okay. It's okay if your child corrects you. It's okay for your child to correct you. Because at the end of the day, it's not for you to show how powerful you are, but at the end of the day, our goal is to bring up good young men and women. Okay? And you need to understand that your children are going to see things in ways that you can't see them yourself. And the more open you are to that, the better relationship and the better home you're going to have. When as a leader you don't take serious other opinions, when you as a leader do not take other opinions within your group seriously, here's what happens. You lose credibility. You lose credibility. You're not taken seriously anymore as a leader. Number two, you will be seen as insecure. Believe it or not, the people that are with you have a brain. Did you know that? I have to know. I have to be conscious as a pastor that you all have brains. That you all can see things that I may not see. I cannot work with the idea that those that I'm working with are complete idiots that don't know anything. And sometimes leaders try to lead that way. You have to lead with the idea that the people that are with you are smart, that they are knowledgeable of things that you don't have knowledge of. You have to work with the idea that they have something to bring to the table, that they can add to whatever you're doing. You have to work with people with the idea that they can make you as a leader better. And that whatever vision you had, they can even empower that vision, and they can make that vision even stronger. As a leader, you have to work with that mentality. You can't work with the mentality as a leader as if you have all the answers and that you are the one bringing everything to the table, and what's going to make this work is if everybody does what you tell them to do. No. When you come in with that mentality, you're losing credibility. You'll be seen as an insecure person. You will begin to be seen as a control freak. Your team will constantly get smaller and smaller. But it's not your fault. They're not committed. At this point, this leader blames the group for lack of commitment. No, they just don't want to work with someone who doesn't value them. People want to work with someone who values them, someone who respects them, someone who respects their opinion and doesn't fake like they're listening to them, but is really listening to them. You can sense a fake leader, like when they act like they're listening to you, right? They'll sit there. Yes, very important. By the way, okay, let's continue doing this. You can see that. People value a leader that senses that the leader is willing to take a risk with them. To take a risk with them, even if it might not come out right. They value that. And when they see that you as a leader are willing to take risks with them, those people are going to be supporting you and behind you all the time. But when people feel their input doesn't matter, they will begin to lose respect for you. There actually is a difference between using people for you to look good and actually leading people to accomplish a common goal. Do I need to say that again? I think I caught you off guard on that. There actually is a difference. Okay? Remember, when you lead anything, if you're a nurse at work, if you are your business owner, if you are a realtor and you're trying to work with a group of people, if you are a children's leader, a music leader, an elder at church, if anything where you are leading and trying to accomplish things, there's actually a difference between using people for you to look good and actually leading people to accomplish a common goal. Did you get that? Okay? There is a difference between that. When a leader is trying to lead anything, and all he's worried about how he or she is going to look, all of a sudden you forget about the people, you forget about the goal, and it becomes all about yourself. So the ability to see deficiencies outside of you is good. But that carries a responsibility. That now you must communicate those deficiencies that you see in the right way to the right person. And be patient with it happening. And us as leaders, we have to realize that others have the ability to see things that you can't see. How many times people have come to this church and after they say, Pastor, I think that if we did this, it would be good. But you see, you have to know that I will make you responsible for that. Okay? You have to know that I will make you responsible for that ability that God has given you. And I will say, thank you very much for that opinion. I think it's very important too. When are you willing to start? Okay? Because I will make you responsible for that ability that God has given you. I will make you responsible for that because God has given you something that He hasn't given me. And He gave it to you for a reason. To make sure that carries out. And my answer to you is going to be, what can I do to help you carry that out? As a pastor. So we as leaders must understand that people have that ability to see things that we can't see. And if you want your program, you want your church, you want things to be well-rounded and complete, you must listen to other people. When you as a leader don't listen to other people, whatever program you have will show your strengths and will show your weaknesses. But if you allow other people to bring in, then your program will be completely strong because it doesn't just show your character. You've let other people in to fill in what you can't do. You get that? I mean, I don't know if you saw this in Nehemiah 2:17, but I did. Okay? when he says, you see the distress that are in how Jerusalem lies waste. See, he saw the distress. And Nehemiah came to do something about that distress. Number 2 is the ability to see deficiencies within you. If you read the verse, it says, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build. I mean, you see this. You see our situation. You see that we're in. We also as human beings have the ability to see deficiencies within us. You don't only have the ability to look at something and see what's wrong with it. We are the only living creatures who can perceive ourselves. We're the only ones who can do that. A dog can't do that. A dog can't say, I'm kind of slow on, protecting the house here. I don't know, maybe I should tell the owner to bring another dog in who can do that because, I do other stuff. Animals can't do that. We are the only living beings who can actually perceive ourselves. We can look at ourselves and we can see our deficiencies. We can see what's wrong with us. In other words, we can see the walls that are torn down around us. And one of the problems that a lot of times people have is that they never perceive themselves. They're always perceiving other people. But they never look at themselves. What are the things that I can make my life better? This ability will make you greater than you could be without it. This ability of us looking at ourselves is what gives us the ability to grow and become better. Without that ability, you will never change. That is a great ability that I, as Pastor Labrador, understand that I'm not good at details. And that is 100% true. I'm being honest with you here. To me, everything, I see the big picture. I need people around me that are detail-oriented. And they remind me, but I know that I'm not into details. I'm into get it done. Just get it done. No, but Pastor, get it done. How? Which way? Whatever. Use your talents. Use the gifts that God has given you. You know how to. I don't need to know. Get it done. Okay? And I will be pushing you and pushing you. Get it done. And you will be using the talents and abilities that God has given you to boom, boom, boom. Put all these little details in there. And at the end of the day, we all did it and we all put it together. Okay? But I have to understand that there are certain things that I'm not good at. And I need to find other people that are good at those things. Okay? And there's a lot of other things that I'm not good at, but I'm enough with embarrassing myself. Okay? So, the ability to look at yourself, and maybe you in your spiritual life say, I have a problem with consistency. I start my devotionals, and I start praying every day, and after a week, I don't do it anymore. Okay, is there anyone here like that? Okay, so if you have to know that, then that's a great ability that God has given you, that you can look at yourself. You call somebody who can do that, who's having a devotion every day, say, listen, every day when you get up to do your devotion, can you call me and ask me what am I doing? If you're a businessman, no businessman or no businesswoman is complete. You have the ability to perceive yourself and see your weaknesses and your strength, and you find people, put people around yourself that will make you strong. This ability creates a community of support that guarantees success. There is no such thing. I put a thing on Facebook about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he says, there's one thing you can't call me, and that's a self-made man. He said, every step of the way, I needed somebody else. Every step of the way, I needed people. And every step of the way, I created a group around me that helped me to become everything that I become. And the problem is that a lot of times we try to do things alone. Could it be because you want the credit all by yourself? Could it be that you just want all the credit? I hope that's not it. The idea of perceiving yourself and knowing your weaknesses and your strengths, and getting other people involved in your spiritual life, getting others involved in your projects, will create a community that when you reach that final goal, you will be able to celebrate together. See, it's kind of hard to celebrate by yourself. It is always good to celebrate with others. It is always good to bring other people with you. The book of Haggai, chapter 1, verse 5 and 7, says the following. Now therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways, okay? Consider your ways. Look at yourself. Consider your ways. You have sown much and bring in little. How many of you feel like you're working really hard, but you're not bringing in anything? You eat, but you do not have enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages, but put into a bag with holes. How many of you feel that? Thus says the Lord of hosts. Then he says, he finishes, consider your ways. In other words, look at yourself. Look at yourself. That's where it starts. That great ability that God has given you to look at yourselves and see where you're weak and see where you're strong. And bring other people in to make you strong where you are weak. You see, your walls are torn down, but you don't see that. You have deficiencies, but you don't ask for help. So therefore, all you're going to do is cry about those deficiencies the rest of your life. Well, it's just, I can do this, but I can't do that. And it's a broken record. It's a broken record. Yeah, I have this week. It's a broken record. And you'll be 80 years old saying the same thing without knowing where our deficiencies are and bringing somebody else in and getting other people and become accountable to those people. And then also you have the ability to see the deficiencies and actually do something about them. We have the ability to do that. Did you know that? Did you know that you actually had the ability to see your deficiencies and actually do something about them? You can do that. You don't have to leave the walls laying waste all day long for 93 years. You can actually create changes in your life. So Nehemiah said, I see that the walls are torn down. Can't you see that these walls are torn down? Can't you see? He also told them that we are looking bad in front of people. Look at verse 17 again. Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste. Apply this to your life. I want you to read this. Forget about the walls. And apply this to your life. Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste. Sometimes people, if we don't wake up and make some changes, our life is going to be a waste. How Jerusalem lies waste. How much talent, how much ability that we have is lying wasted. Wasted. Because all we do is complain about it. And we don't perceive ourselves and try to strengthen ourselves. How Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the walls of Jerusalem. He said, come on. Let's make some changes. Let's build these walls. Come and let us build the walls of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach. Oh man, those words hit me hard. You know, and I felt the Spirit of God telling me, Pastor Labrador, come on. Wake up. The things that you've been thinking about and talking about and just thought about them, come on, Pastor Labrador. How long are you going to be looked at as a reproach? You know, because when we sit there and we don't accomplish everything that God created us to, we become a reproach. We become a reproach. When we see people that don't even believe in God are accomplishing more than we are. And we're like telling them, well, I have an amazing God. My God is powerful. All right, so what's going on? Why is your life the way it is? We become a reproach. When our lives are disorganized, when we're not accomplishing everything that we said we're going to accomplish, and then we call ourselves Christians. And here he's saying, listen, we're God's people, and we're the only city with no walls. All these other cities have walls, and we're God's people. And our walls are torn down and burned up. Says, listen, people are laughing at us. We're a reproach. We call the name of Jehovah and God, the greatest God of all, and we can't even put up the walls. That we may no longer be a reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So he told him, he said, listen, God spoke to me. And God told me about building these walls and rebuilding the city. See, a lot of times people, it just takes one person to say, this is wrong. It cannot continue to be like this. And we must make it different. And I can tell you this right now. This is why Origin exists. Because I believe that we can do things differently. And I can believe that a change can be made. And I believe that we can do things the way the Bible tells us to do it. And I don't believe in just looking at the walls being torn down and complain about the walls and complain about the walls. No, stop. I believe I actually need to stop complaining about the walls and start building walls. And some people are okay about being in a place where the walls are torn down and they just say, yeah, I know, yes. I know this ain't right, but you know, I'll let God take care of it. Nehemiah didn't say, let God build the walls. He said, no, God sent me to build the walls. So we don't only have the ability to see what's wrong. We have the ability to see what's wrong within us. And we have the ability to do we have the ability to repair what's wrong. And each one of us has to do those three things. We have to see what's wrong, and that's okay. But that ability carries a responsibility. And a lot of times to carry that responsibility, you have to look within yourself. Because you also have the ability to look within yourself and see what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, and to bring others around you so that you can become fully strong. But you also have the ability to do something about what's wrong. And you have to step up. And the best way to do that is to surround yourself with other people. Talk to other people. Bring people together. As leaders, we have to know that people have the ability to look at what's wrong. People are not blind. I have to know as a pastor that you have the ability to see what I'm doing wrong. I can't live as if you cannot see. I, as a pastor, as a leader, have to look at myself, and I have to see the weaknesses within me. And the weaknesses that are within me, I have to find those strengths in you. And I have to bring you to cover that weaknesses in me. Because at the end of the day, this is not about Juan Labrador. This is not about me. This is about God. This is about the goal that we have. To have a church that preaches a biblical message. A church that whatever funds are brought in are used for the community. They're not used to go stay at a hotel, at Marriott, on the beach, for all administrators and their families, and to then say that we don't have money for evangelism. We want to create a church, whatever money comes in, are used for mission, are used for the community, are used to preach the gospel, are used to prepare this world for the second coming of Jesus. To create a place that really understands its mission. That the mission of our church is not to give the pastor a big salary. It is used for mission. That this is not a business. That we are a church that wants to come together because God has called each one of us, and all of us together can exercise the calling that God has given us. Amen. And we have the mission as a church to prove that that can be done. Amen. That it can be done. That we can actually meet in a little room in a church that we're preparing and prepare a mission trip to go help children and to go give stuff to children in Belize, Jamaica, or any other place, and that we do not have to go to the Hyatt Hotel on the beach to make that plan. Amen. That we can actually sit down in a little room and plan that and use that money at the Hyatt, use it to be able to bless others. We want to be able to see what's wrong and not criticize, continue talking about what's wrong, but prove that it can be done differently. And that a little church can do mission work all over the world without having an overhead that eats up 90% of what goes in. See, we have to know that people can see what's wrong. We have to know that people can see it. And we have to know the changes we need to make. And that's not only as a church. It is also as individuals where those changes need to be made. To finish off, I want to tell you that the next 4 or 5 chapters of Nehemiah, you know what happens? The next 4 or 5 chapters of Nehemiah are actually very boring. Let me tell you why. Because it repeats the same thing about 100 times. Look at chapter 3, verse 1. This might not be because I did not give it. All of a sudden, chapter 3, verse 1, listen to this. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of 100 and consecrated it. Then as far as the Tower of Hananel. Next, Eliashib, the men of Jericho, built, and next to them, Zakur, the son of Remi. So as you read the next chapter, what happens when Nehemiah tells them this, each family, each group gets up and one builds this part of the wall. And in 52 days, what had been lying for 93 years gets built in 52 days. Because each family got up and said, this little piece of the wall, I'm building this little piece of the wall. And somebody else got up and said, I'm gonna hang the doors. I'm going to do this. And you read for the next 3 or 4 chapters the same thing, how each family, how each group came together and built a little piece. And what had been lying there for 93 years got built back up in 52 days. That's when people stopped looking at what's wrong and decided to do something about what's wrong. I'm going to tell you something. I have a problem. I perceive that I have a problem. And that problem is when somebody begins to tell me what should happen and what should be done, but are not willing to cooperate. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with people who are able, have the ability to perceive what's wrong, but don't have the ability that the problem might begin with them, or the ability to actually do something about the problem. They just like to explain to you of how smart they are and how they are able to tell you what needs to be done. I have very little patience for that. And I'll ask God to give me a little bit more patience with that. But I believe when God gives us the ability to see something what's wrong, God also gives us the ability to create a change and get it done. And become part of the solution. And that's how we become better. Because God has given you something that you see that no one else can see. And you have to be responsible for that ability. I think that Nehemiah taught me some amazing principles of leadership. And some things that we as parents need to practice in our homes with our children. Things that we need to practice at our jobs, things that we need to practice in our church, and things that we need to practice at every point of our lives so that we do not become a reproach to God. But that God can actually be proud of who we are and what we do. May God bless us today.